I'm here to thank Reem Yazigi and the Google I-18N intergrouplet for making all this possible, and for the food. Okay, that's what gets the applause right there. Food. Thank you very much. And also to the Google Tech Talk team that's making me look good right now. Okay, this will be on YouTube. I don't know, in 10 days or so. It depends how long it takes. And I really want to thank you guys for turning IMUG into such a professional-looking outfit. You know, it's pretty good. I'm Joe Katz. I'm IMUG's volunteer marketeer, and one of the things I'm into is mobile app marketing, which is why I keep staring at this. No, I'm not. I'm actually. I got my notes here. I'm not tweeting while I talk. So Roger Sherman, our program chair, asked me to. Thank you, Roger. He asked me to introduce Brendan this time because I invited him here. Roger's working on more programs for us.
Yes, if anyone has any ideas, let me know.
Okay. There's a lot of ideas in this room, I bet you. And also I want to thank our volunteer Yasmin Vanya over there. Hey. Yasmin's a localization manager, senior software engineer, and so on, and is an example of the kind of volunteers that work with IMUG, and we need more volunteers. As a matter of fact, tonight we need picture volunteers because Tex Texan, our volunteer photographer, is not here. So if everybody can just snap pictures with your phones, and there's a place, not of me though, there's a place on the Meetup site at the bottom of the comments area when the Meetup is over where you can just upload your pictures, or you can go to imug.org/contact and send them to me and Roger, and we'll put them up. And you know, we need volunteers for other stuff too, for helping us organize these meetings, for organizing our parties, and also we do events with other groups sometimes. So for example, Yasmin represented us at a Lingoport roundtable, and we had our own table there. But then that means you also get to go to the event for free. What she didn't know was that the whole event was free. But you know, we still got her to volunteer for that one. So we need more volunteers because Paris has moved to New York. So we can always use more help. Cause you just leave it to me and Roger, and nothing will go right. You know, that's why we need you. What else was I? Oh, and we have a very special guest. The original volunteer. We have Chairman Emeritus and IMUG founder Yuan Ho. Hey, Yuan. And so, you know, I have to tell the story now, not just because he's here, but because a lot of people are new. You know, Yuan in 1987 met this guy in an Apple computer dealer store. The guy's name was Seth Schneider, who went on to found Multilingual Computing Magazine. Now it's just called Multilingual, and about 1.5 million other things, I think, eventually. And they got this going. They agreed there should be an international related computing group. They started out as part of the Stanford Mac Group, SMUG, as the international SIG. And you know, even then, as a Mac group, it was very clear that this was about more than Macintosh, though. So for a long time, we always knew the M really stood for multilingual, and have just continued to grow from there. Yuan spun the group off as an independent MUG in 1991. And it was sponsored by Apple and Adobe, and most recently by Google, and just been meeting almost every month ever since. Roger hates it when I say almost. It's missed at least 1 month. 1 month since 1987. But I mean, you know, they were meeting. They used to meet. They used to put like posters up on real physical bulletin boards that said there's a meeting about stuff. And I have one on the past events index on the IMUG site, where we've got our archives. There is a scan of a 1993 flyer that says this guy named Lee Collins was going to be there to talk about this weird new thing called Unicode. And that's, you know, and they used to run those around with SneakerNet, and you know, people came. Now, tonight let me just stop this beast and get to a specific slide. Is this Keynote? It is Keynote. All right, there we are. So the official hashtag for tonight's event on Twitter is IMUG408. We're always IMUG408. I know we're in 650. They're going to put an overlay on 408. I don't care. It's too complicated. Anyway, this is 650, but it used to be 415 when it was SRI. So, this is IMUG 408. And I want to make sure everybody knows about the IMUG Jobs Board. A couple of these are brand new. And the last one, the internships thing, that turns into a really long list if you click through of all sorts of stuff. They're looking for interns in everything from terminology management to deep web development. But we also have some G11N engineer positions, and companies can post for just $5. We're not trying to make money on it, just trying to provide a service. And that's at imug.org/jobs. These are our upcoming dates. We spoiled you last year. Roger had people lined up all year. We had at least 3 months out. Right now we got some things that we think are planned, but we're not sure what the topics will be. And if you or someone from your company would like to speak, just email Roger there, and we'll be glad to hear from you. Also, there's a couple of other events coming up. Localization Unconference, which is instigated by another troublemaker from Ireland, Alton O'Brien, and a bunch of people from Oracle and Salesforce mostly. They're going to meet at Salesforce, I think, in Silicon Valley. I can't remember where they're meeting in Dublin, but it's a really a non-structured, non-sales conference where you set the agenda. Also, the Localization Institute has these certification programs going on. This is an annual thing they do since 2006, and the current program is a joint cooperation between the Localization Institute and Cal State. And I looked at their site before we met and noticed at least 3 past IMUG speakers are going to be teaching there. Anna Schlegel, the Senior Globalization Manager at NetApp. Matt Sanford, the Internationalization Technology Manager at Twitter. And Stephen Loomis, the CLDR Tech Lead at IBM. And a whole bunch of other people will be teaching at those certification programs. And lastly, we're on all these networks now, and in the past year, we started doing this to grow when we moved locations. And I just wanted to ask a couple questions because we still have a presence on Yahoo groups. We thought about going to Google groups, but it would have been a better same thing. So we tried Meetup. Still not internationalized, but that's not what I'm going to ask about because I'm working on them. They messed something else up, so they're working on that now. So the thing is, I post jobs. When the jobs go on the IMUG jobs board, I put them on all these networks. And when I send out an email to Yahoo groups, I can see all this traffic. When I'm trying not to send too many emails to people, Meetup already sends you two reminders before the event. I could use it to send email to you. But I don't want to do that if then you're going to turn everything off, right? So what I've been doing is I've been putting it on the message board on there, and you have the choice of making it a digest or nothing. And I noticed when I put the jobs on that board, I don't see much traffic. I don't know if that's because everybody has jobs or not, because in the Yahoo group we see a lot of people clicking through. So I was just wondering, should I be sending these with a direct email when I have a new job for people that are on Meetup, or are you also on the Yahoo group and so on? I mean, who wants more email? Okay, kill him. And I know, because I really don't know what to do, but I don't want you to miss them. Some of them are good.
My recommendation is stay with Yahoo.
I've heard that we're still doing everything mirrored on Yahoo because a lot of people do not want to come over to these new networks. Yeah, and
I refuse to change.
good for you. Good for you. Change is bad. I've heard that. And so every time I still send out the IMUG I18N newsletter on Yahoo, and everybody gets the same content eventually, and I try and stagger it so you don't get them all in one day. But it took me about 6 months to figure that out. So I hope you didn't start turning me off about that. Anyway, that's fine. Let's go back to the first slide because you're not really here to listen to me. Now I'm going to introduce our speaker. You have to imagine that there's someone much more calm speaking now, and he's got an Irish brogue, and then this will make a lot more sense because Brendan Clavin is the co-founder and CTO of Tetris. He's originally from a house near a crossroads, beside the hamlet, close to a very small village, beyond the resolution of Google Earth. Brendan escaped cosmopolitan Ireland and planted himself firmly in Silicon Valley. He was the first software engineer at Claris, Ireland in 1990, set up the engineering tools team at Iona Software in 1995, built the localization department at Ariba in 1999, and was the first hire into the engineering team at some company called Google in 2005. And apparently he fits right in with the Valley crowd with his collection of bicycles and Hawaiian shirts. You weren't kidding, were you?
No.
So now, without further ado, I give you Brendan Clavin.
Thank you, Joe. Just let me get set up here and do some mirroring and non-mirroring for a second. So if nothing else, my shirt is going to show up on this video nicely. Bear with me here for a second. Displays. And arrangement. Don't mirror displays. Okay. Close this one. Aha. Almost there. Okay. So thank you, Joe, for the introduction, and Roger for having me here tonight. I think Joe has summed it up, my career, and hopefully you know a little bit about my background from that description. But just to add a little more to that, I've been internationalizing and localizing software for 20 years, a little over 20 years. Most recently, before starting this company a little over a year ago, I worked here at Google, and I managed the the Google Localization Framework team, where we were responsible for all of the infrastructure that gets Google's products translated into over 100 languages in some cases, and we had 50 or 60 products. So this was really an effort of localization at scale, if you like. And I had two customers within Google. One was the engineering team, and make them efficient in the processes and how they do localization, and the localization team, the people that manage the relationships with the vendors and the translators, and make it efficient for them as well. And ultimately then my customers were the consumers of Google's products in all of these different languages. I did start out my career back at Claris. I see some of the guys from my first job are here tonight that I worked with many years ago. Back in the day, I did the first version of ClarisWorks for Japan, pre-Unicode, pre-Lee Collins talk. And so 2-byte text engines was where I cut my teeth as an engineer. And over the last 20 years, I've worked for various companies, localizing everything from enterprise software to desktop software to games and multimedia educational software. So that's a little bit about me. I just want to kind of get a sense in the audience who you guys are. How many people here are app developers? Okay, I see a few. And I presume there are some localization folks, localization managers, translators in the audience? Yeah. Okay, all right, very good. Okay, so I'm going to talk about app localization as a service and the company that I formed, Tetris. The genesis of this and me leaving Google a little over a year and a half ago was seeing the change in profile of the people that are developing apps. And this really was predicated by the release of iPhone. And looking at the profile of these developers and the companies that are producing these apps, and them not doing localization. So every company that I've worked at, I was brought in or hired, as an engineer or to start a group after companies had traction in the domestic US market to come in and build localization departments and make things efficient for them. Google was all about doing things at scale, but the profile of the app developers they're 1, 2, 3-man shops, and they really are not being serviced, and they don't understand the opportunities, and they're never going to go out and hire people like me into their organizations because they're 1 and 2-man shops. So this was really the change in profile of the developers, and me seeing that need and the gap in the market that I started this company. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about marketing, that M word that I shouldn't talk about at a tech talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about the market opportunities, and we'll get into some process and how localization is done within the iPhone development environment, and talk about some of the tools that we've built. Feel free to ask questions at any time. I don't mind being interrupted, and we can make this as interactive as you like. Okay, so if you'll just humor me for a second, I'm going to play a small video here. Okay, who can tell me how many apps in that ad were localized? 0? Okay, they all were. This is a French Apple TV iPad campaign. Right there in the middle of that ad was one of our products that we translated for a customer, our Lighthouse customer. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But Apple picked the companies that have put into this ad campaign because the apps were popular, but more so they were localized and localized into a number of languages. So Apple did not put any apps on this unless they were localized at the time that their ad agency went out to build the ad campaign for the international markets. I can't quite remember. I know French, I think Korean, Japanese, Chinese were definitely localization requirements. So with that, let me talk a little bit about what we do, and it's not ad campaigns for Apple. So we turn this, which is the app that was in the middle of that ad. It's a medical app produced by an Irish company, lots of medical content in here. So we take this and turn it into this, the French version. And so what you'll notice here, it's all localized. That's quite familiar to everyone in this room. I think everyone understands localization. And if I just build this out a little bit, you'll see that this app has lots of medical content, and all of this is translated. We translated this into 6 languages. Apart from the engineering that our service provides and the translation and everything from professional translators to translate the UI to the medical experts that we had to go out and bring into our network to translate the medical content, we also
raccourci, mouvement et toucher. Balayer l'écran pour une rotation. Un long balayement de l'écran pour une coupe transversale. Zoomer, toucher 2 fois l'écran pour une animation. Retoucher l'écran pour arrêter l'animation. Toucher l'écran pour voir apparaître les épingles. Toucher une épingle pour voir le nom. Toucher l'icône d'information pour avoir la description. Toucher en dehors de la description pour la désactiver. Toucher en dehors des épingles pour les désactiver, balayer l'écran pour une rotation.
Okay, I think we've heard enough of this, sorry. So we basically do, we have a recording studio as well, so we provide not only localization of text, we also do localization of graphics, and we have a recording studio that we've bring the actors into our studio and do the voiceovers for this. So
What's the name of this app and what price?
the app that I'm just talking about, that app is $17.99. I just happen to know that.
The reason I asked is if it's $1,700, they can afford it versus $17. I'm just trying to get the
Yeah, I guess it really depends on how many apps you're selling, right? This is a $17.99 app. The last time I looked, I think it might have been down to $14.99 at some stage. It's medical content rich. Yes, he probably sells enough of these apps that he can afford to do it. But I'll talk about this later. We've done everything from someone coming to us and spending $100 to get an app into a language to a few $1,000s, and it's really predicated by the amount of content that's in there and the level of translation that they require, be it specialist. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. Okay, so why are we doing all this? Why are we translating this? We want our customers to turn this, their code, their content, their incredibly cool English app, and we want them to turn it into loads of money. So can they go out and, make some more yuan, yen, euros, whatever the case may be. So I'm going to talk a little bit here about the market and the evolution of apps and the space that we're going after with localization as a service. So if we look at the app download market in 2009, it was valued at around 800 million. And what we did here is we took the numbers of these downloads and the revenues from these downloads across the globe and broke it down, English speaking versus non-English speaking. And in 2009, it roughly broke down to about 60% of the apps out there were downloaded by English-speaking consumers in the English-speaking regions of the world. The predictions for 2011 are that this will increase to about $2.5 billion, and this is app sales. And English-speaking here, as you see, is reducing and is heading towards half. And by 2015, this market is estimated to be worth about $5.6 billion. And you'll see here that the English-speaking regions that these apps are sold in is getting to about a third. So the proliferation of the devices, Apple, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, and where the opportunities are definitely outside of North America and the primarily English-speaking regions of the world. So there's definitely a growing appetite for apps, and I think everyone here who has a smartphone, an iPhone, even a feature phone is probably aware of this. And so we looked at some data, and the average number of apps that existed on the feature phones of old was 1 in terms of purchases. And that's quite understandable. You bought a phone to make phone calls and not really browse the web and use apps. And then I guess with the advent of the Palm and BlackBerry, that number increased up to about 22. And the iPhone today, data out there says there's about 37 apps per phone. And I don't find that surprising at all, given that Apple came out with iOS 4 and created folders, because I think they were running out of screens for the number of apps that people had installed on their phones and couldn't fit them on there. So definitely it's on the rise in terms of the move towards apps. And so if we just take a quick look then, again, this is market opportunity, but it's also what I like to tell people about why localize. So you can talk about the English speaking versus the non-English speaking, but I use this when I talk to developers about Apple being a mature company in terms of where their revenue come from. Where are you in terms of your app sales? And if you just take a look at the numbers here, 18.6 million iPhones in Q1, that's up from about, I think, about 16 million in Q4, which is amazing given that Q4 is your holiday season. The other thing to note here, and I know from an IMUG or an internationalization perspective, it's always good to see this, Apple's revenues, 59% came from international. Down a little bit from Q4 2010, where I think it was about 62%, but still, these are great numbers. And the things to note here in terms of growth, in the APAC region, that 182% increase year over year in this past quarter. And China blew it out of the water in terms of 250% growth in iPhone sales in China. And I was talking to somebody earlier, I don't know the price of an iPhone in China, but somebody was mentioning it's like 3 times more expensive than it is over here relative to earnings. So the gap in the market, as we see it for these app developers, is that from our estimation, about 80% of the apps on the App Store today are available in English only. If you go in and look at the top 100 apps and drill down and look at the languages that they're available in, it varies from about 60 to 85%, depending on the genre that you're looking at. And the App Store has, I think, about 22 different genres, and the App Store runs across about 62 different countries. So we correlated that data and came up with about 80%. And also, Apple's sales, and I mentioned this earlier, about 60% of iOS devices today are in the hands of non-native English speakers. That's not to say they don't speak English, but they're just non-native. So a huge opportunity here for the app developers to localize their apps and get it into the hands of the non-English speaking consumers of the world. So why is this gap? And I think I'm preaching to the choir here. I think a lot of people understand this, but I'll point out. So there are differences, economic differences, and a lot of the app developers today are English speakers, and the groundswell of apps are produced here in the US, and a lot of the developers on the App Store are English speaking by virtue of the tools and their engineering and their education, so they think English first and they go after the biggest market. But with the growth of the iOS devices and the proliferation of them overseas, the opportunities are there for localized apps. I'll mention here too, there's a gap too in terms of, why are developers not doing this as compared to a Google who is doing it, or an Adobe or a Microsoft. These tend to be small projects, and they're developed by small teams who build these apps in anything from a few weeks to a few months. I don't think there's any mobile apps out there that take more than a year to develop. And so they do these small projects, and then they turn around as a small amount of content in that particular project, and to go out and buy those services from a traditional localization company is a little difficult in terms of the price point that the companies want to do business with. And the small teams, the developers, and I'll talk about this a little more, they don't have the time really to get into an engaged process with many language, translators and coordinate the delivery of their apps into these different markets. And so I've mentioned that localization companies are not really in a position to go out and do business with somebody who's going to spend $100 or $200 maybe every 6 months, assign a project manager to that and make that work. And a lot of app developers, and there's a real long tail, and I'll talk about that, they're not making a lot of money out there. So they might be making pocket money out of selling these apps, and they have a real job, potentially, to put bread on the table. But their barrier to getting localization is high, or the perceived barrier to getting localization is high. So they don't bother doing that. They prefer to probably write another app and see if that can be the hit that'll let them retire earlier, so on. And I think really it gets down to the app developer, or the profile of the app developer. It's time consuming, and the most valuable asset that an app developer has is his own time. And so this really gets down to, do you speak my language? Here's a person looking at an iPhone. Put the top apps from Japan in front of somebody who doesn't speak that language. They're not going to be able to use it. And the same thing is true if you put an English app or the only apps that are available are English apps for games. People can't buy them, they can't use them. So it is about speaking the language of that consumer. I think too, and I'll add this in, I think that up to now, the app developers, especially on the iOS and the App Store, have gotten away because the profile of the people that are buying apps tend to be people who have more money to spend on these expensive devices. They're probably third level educated, and they get away with buying English apps. And so that's changing now. The price of iPhone is coming down, the data plans are coming down. I think the iPad is a changer in this. People that make the decision to buy that iPad, who make enough money to buy it, are handing it to their kids who don't speak English to play with. They're also handing it to their parents. And putting them on it. And in international markets, these people don't necessarily speak English. So I think there is a change here about to happen with the dropping of price and just who is actually using these devices and in a position to purchase these apps. So I'll talk a little bit here about the app developer, and I've alluded to this already. But if we take a look at the App Store, there's about 80,000 publishers on the App Store right now. People have come and gone since the App Store opened. They're not all active, but there are more and more people becoming app developers, getting into the game. There are about 350,000 iPhone apps. The last time I looked at the Apple website, about 65,000 iPad apps, and Apple sort of bandies about over 400,000 apps. I'm not quite sure what the new apps that come online every year, but it's probably going to be in the 50 to 100,000 range, and we wait to see what happens there. I've talked about the developer profile. So I don't know if you can see this. On the x-axis here, we have the total number of app developers, and that really is a long tail because people are coming in and going out of the App Store all the time. People give it a try, they don't make a living out of it, they give up, and then more people are still trying to make a living out of it, and then there are guys that are really making a living. And up along the y-axis is team size. What our research has shown that about 90% of the app developers that are putting apps out there today are in teams of 5 or less. And I'd even warrant that it's like teams of 3 or less. So there is a real long tail here, and this is why the numbers are at 80% for the non-localized apps in the App Store. Okay, so I'm going to get into sort of the meat of the talk right now. I'm going to talk about localization as a service, and particularly in how Tetris has defined this and what we're doing to provide localization as a service to these app developers. So I'm going to take a quick look here at the traditional localization model. I'm going to insert the app developer right here on the left-hand side of this screen. So typical localization companies, I refer to them as bricks and mortar companies. You've got account management, you've got translation management that manage, the translators. If you've got audio visual engineers, graphic artists and whatever, the people that do the actual localization. So there's this big piece here in the middle. You may have to deal with localization engineering. There's a sales guy going to call on you and so on. And so put the app developer into this environment, and it's very hard for him to work in this environment. And conversely, I think it's very hard for the localization company or the bigger localization companies to work with this app developer when a lot of them are servicing the likes of Google and Microsoft and HP and BMW, who have in the tens of millions of dollars in budgets every year. So this is what we've done at Tetris, is we've moved a lot of these services into the cloud. And really it's because of the profile of the developer, how they work, how big their apps are, or should I say how small their apps are, that has allowed us to do this. And I'm going to demonstrate, what each of these pieces are as I go through my talk, and I've got some tools to show. But really the process is an app developer comes to our site, uploads his content. We're very integrated with his development environment. We give him back pseudo translation for free. We have WYSIWYG tools that allow the translators to translate in context. And there is no sales, there is no project management. It's pretty much self-service. And then we facilitate the routing of his job out to our network of translators. So what's the same here is that in this graph, or this slide and the one before, is that the app developer, the graphic artist, the translator, and the AV engineer on the right of this screen haven't changed. It's still the same people. So the people that are on our network doing this translation may work for localization companies. They may be freelance, and they're registering, coming on, and doing this work. So we put this service right in the middle of these two communities to enable localization as a service. Any questions so far? Okay, so the question was, what languages do we support if an app developer comes into us? We support all of the languages that are supported directly in iOS. So I think that's about 39 or 42. 33? Okay, thanks, JJ. 33. And so the resource mechanism within the iPhone allows for switching of the languages on that. So we basically support all of those languages, yeah. So the question was, do we do Android support? So yes, I realize that I'm very Mac focused in this talk. We have done some Android apps, but we're very focused on iPhone and on iPad today. Our systems, and I'll talk a little bit about this, can take any format. And so we have a very generic XML parser that any XML content or structured content can come to us. And I'll show this in the demo in a little while. It's a matter of how do we provide WYSIWYG tools to the translators to allow them to work with this small profile, the form factor of the iPhone and the iPad and the mobile devices is tricky in terms of text expansion and so on. So really, it's a matter of us what WYSIWYG tools. But in terms of just getting content out of your app and your development environment, if it's in XML format, we can do anything. Yeah. So was another question?
Yeah. Localization as a service in the cloud, how do you guarantee the quality of the localization?
Okay, so the question is, how do I guarantee the quality of the localization? So I'll show this a little later when I demonstrate the tools and the WYSIWYG nature. But I may not have mentioned it. I should have. The translators that humans, we don't use machine translation, so it's not automated translation. And we provide 4 levels of translation service to our customers. We have an ultra level translation, which is a professional translator that's qualified by us, that's a native speaker, will do the translation, and then a second person will do the review, and they're a native professional translator, and that's one level of service. If a developer wants to come to us and just by professional level translation with no secondary review, they can do that. That's a cheaper level. And then we have a standard or basic level translation where a developer can come to us and ask us for that. And what we have on our network are native speakers who we've qualified, who understand the iPhone, the iPad, whatever the device is that they're translating for, but they're not professionals. So we're trying to enable, cottage industry is a dirty term in California, but we're trying to allow developers to buy at a price point that's comparable with the level of quality they want in their app, and also for people to come in who, maybe a student in Germany, uses an iPad and wants to make some money at night, and rather than going working at Starbucks for 3 hours, they can do translation for us for 3 hours and make the same money. And so we're trying to facilitate that level on both sides. So we're in effect, we're building a marketplace for people to come in and do business. I actually just pulled that out of the air. I don't actually know what students are getting paid at Starbucks. So you got me there, JJ, for sure. I haven't done the comparison.
Can you tell us what's the percentage of people choosing the highest level of service?
Oh, wow, I don't have those numbers. It's about 50-50, I'd say, from the customers that we've worked for. The app that I just passed around, and I hope I get my iPad back later, but play with it and have fun. That was high end, that was specialist. And so we actually, and you'll see this when I show you our service, that customer came to us and said, I have a medical app. And we said, okay, we need to get medical professionals to do the translation. So we went out and sourced them. They're on our network now. We showed him their resumes so that he was comfortable with that. But then we told him that, that's a certain price point. That's our specialist rate. And so we told him then, you don't need these specialists to translate your app. So we differentiated the medical content from the actual app. So a medical translator understands the heart, the valves, how it works, but they don't understand swiping and scrolling and whatever else. So we allow people to split it up on a file level, the translation. So again, it's kind of muddied in terms of what they're specifically asking for, because there's a case of one customer who did professional, ultra, and specialist. And we have some guys that come in and just do the basic, and they're happy to do that. So it's a level, I shouldn't say, this is probably the wrong way of saying it. It's a couple of levels above machine translation, right, for basic. So they're not willing to spend for a professional and a review. That's fine. They want to go out and put their toe into the market. If they get feedback that the translation quality is bad, they'll come back and say, now I need to fix this. But we do our best to make sure that we have the right people on the network. But professionals are professionals, and two eyes are better than one. Yes?
Basically, anyone can translate something once, but the trick is keeping it up. We offer services for glossary maintenance and for revision processing when
Yes.
5%.
Yes. So the question is, do we offer maintenance and leveraging going forward? And actually, that's the core of our message and the core of our business, is that we really hear, and I think it should be evident by the demonstration, the core of our business is maintenance. And it's the developer's time. The value that we're presenting to the developer is how little he has to do in order to procure translation, build it into his app, and then keep developing. Because that's what these guys do. They keep developing. They want to get the next app. So if they spend 3 months, they only want to spend a few days doing localization. And so we support the continuous development model along the lines of SVN. We use SVN, but we're not. That's not the core of our architecture. Developers can keep throwing their content to us after they have given us the first time. We'll tell them what they've changed. We'll tell them down to the string what they've changed and what they pay accordingly. It's not translation memory. It's not fuzzy matching. This is pure resource reuse in their apps. And I'll get into that a little bit more, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I bring up the site and bring up the demonstration. Yes, another question.
Do you only do mobile apps, or do you also translate regular web apps?
So the question is, do we translate content other than mobile apps, such as web apps? No, we don't. We're very, very focused on iPhone and iPad right now. We will do Android if asked. We do HTML content. So if there's some HTML within an iPhone app, or a guy has some support pages that he wants translated, yes, we have parsers and we can take care of that. But we're not advertising ourselves as a web localization company. Maybe down the line, but not today.
Probably you will explain it better. How do you manage text within an image? It's got to be true text that you're translating, or an image you can also read.
Okay, so the question was, how do we handle text within images, or how is that done? We will take bitmap files from a developer or publisher and charge accordingly to do that. We encourage people not to have text on graphics. And so you'll see from the demo that we're very focused around the supported formats on iPhones, such as .strings and .xib files and .nib from the Mac side. And then on Android, it's the .strings and the XML files from that. But we have no magic. We have no OCR recognition. We don't do any of that stuff, no.
Do you offer an infrastructure where, let's say, a developer has an associate in Germany that who's not technical, where they can go into your structure and do the translation?
So So the question is, do we offer infrastructure that allows a developer's friend, say from Germany, come in and work on our apps? Paul, I know I didn't pay you to say this, but that was a very good question. So yes, from day one, we built this with the app developer in mind. And we know that app developers out there that have done localization have done it with big companies. They've done it with individual translators that they find on some website, and they've done it with their cousins, their friends, and whatever that they can lay their hands on. So that's a long-winded way of answering your question, yes. So we have 4 levels of translator that I mentioned already, the 4 levels of payment: basic, professional, ultra, and specialist, and you can name your own translator. So you can bring anybody you like into our service, no charge to the person to use our service, and they will receive content just like our professional translators and use our tools. So you don't have to send them emails, zip files, whatever the case may be. We do charge for that. We have a small 4 cents per word infrastructure charge for that. And again, we think that's well worth it to the developer because, again, it all gets back to his time is his most valuable resource. And I'll talk about that. I don't have that in my demo, but I'll show you where that works within our infrastructure. Did I see one? Oh, question at the back. Okay. So, any VCs in the room? No? I Can Localize provides an iPhone and mobile app localization service. I don't really know exactly how they take the content in. I think it's form-based or you have a relationship with them, and FTP, I really don't know, so I'm not speaking to that. My Django is a Japanese-based localization company in the cloud, but I believe they take in file formats. But again, I don't know how they're integrated into that service. But I'll show you where it would be bold of me to say we have no competitors. We're always supposed to have competitors. But I think some of the things that we're doing are pretty unique, and I'll demonstrate that. Yes, at the back. Okay, so the question is, do we provide a service if the app is not ready for localization or it's not internationalized? Can we do that? The short answer is no. And the only reason for that is that we're very focused and we are a startup in terms of building out this infrastructure for the 80,000 app developers that are out there and that number that's growing. Some of our Lighthouse customers, yes, we have taken their app in-house and we've done the coding. So we can do that, but we can talk afterwards. My quick answer, I'll just say this right now, if anybody wants that, we probably don't have the bandwidth to do it in our company, but we can get people who can do it. And so I know the people who can do this kind of work. One more question before I move on? Okay, so let's take a look at an iPad app. And here's a little app, and I've got some screenshots here because what I'm about to present is just an overview of the localization process and the internationalization process within Xcode for iPad and iPhone apps. And it's a little involved, and there's a lot of clicking, so I'm just going to use screens here to demonstrate this. And but we will look at this app that I'm showing you right now, which is an iPad app on screen. I will show you the inner workings of that within Xcode in a little bit. So this is just an app that really does nothing. We built it internally at Tetris for some training purposes when we were training people and also training some of our parsers and our tools. It does nothing, but I'll just flick through here. The second screen here just displays an image of an iPhone. This could potentially turn into an iPhone translation app on the iPad, but we won't go there right now. So let's do some coding here, and let's take a look at Xcode and the environment and how one goes about localizing this app. So here I am within Xcode. It's an integrated development environment. All apps on the App Store, iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, Mac, all go through this particular development environment. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to draw your attention to these resources here on the left-hand side, and people that are involved in localization know this well. I've got some PNGs in here, I've got some JPEGs, and I've got these XIB files, which is I think XML interface builder format from Apple. I think it comes from the next days. And these are files that need to be translated. And so Highlighted here on the left is a file called home.xib, and over on the right-hand side is the rendering of this within the editor itself. And this is where a developer will go in and resize buttons or add a button and hook it up with code and so on. So a WYSIWYG editor for developing the UI for basic functionality within an app. And so we'll move on, and I just talked about that. This is the WYSIWYG editor. And you could potentially go in here and hand this file to a translator and ask them to go in and double-click on the sign-in button and translate that into French. But to do that, that translator has to be running on a Mac, has to be running Xcode, and they have to know their way around this environment. It's not really the way you want to do localization, but it can be done that way. And so what I'm looking at now is I've just jumped up to one of the source files, and I'm going to draw your attention here to a hard-coded string which says no image loaded. And there's another little hard-coded string down here at the bottom which I can barely read. I hope you guys can read it. You cannot load a project that is already loaded. So this is typical. An app developer comes in, no matter what framework you're in. It can be a web app, it can be a .NET app. People tend to inline their strings in their code. So these are what are called hard-coded strings, and I'm going to show you how these will be externalized in a bit. So let's jump out to the Finder, the user interface on the Mac, and take a look at the file system. And here are the source files that we just looked at within the IDE within Xcode. And you'll notice here there's the different XIB files in this directory, and they're all sitting in the root directory. Oops, missed that. They're all sitting in the root directory of this app called Dog Food Demo. Okay, so typically these are the files that get uploaded to a website or sent to a project manager at a localization company or submitted through a form for translation. And so I'm going to go back out here and just show you how in Xcode you set your project up for localization. So over here on the left I've selected the home.xib file, and I expanded this editor on the right, and you'll notice here that there are no localizations present. So there is no, the file home.xib has not been set up for localization. And so simply clicking on the little plus to the bottom left of the red circle that I quickly got rid of tells Xcode to make this file localizable, and you see this English is now sitting under the localization section. And by clicking on the little expand button, the developer goes in here and picks all the languages that he wants this app to be translated in. So this is, I guess, internationalization, or setting up your Xcode project to be localized. And so you click on each of these languages. It's a clever menu. If you've picked 6 languages and you go to the next file, you can hit add all. But the point is you set up all of the individual files. And so right now, if I look over here at the home.xib, you'll notice a little triangle has appeared to the left of it, and if I expand that triangle, I'll see that all of the home.xib files for the different locales have been set up. So this, you go through every file, whether it's an XIB file, whether it's a graphic that has text on it, whether it's a sound that has to play when somebody does a good job, playing the game or whatever. This has to be done. So it's a little bit tedious, and I think that Apple could do a better job of making these tools, one button set everything up at once. But so be it. I'll write some bugs and we'll give some feedback. Okay, so now I'm going to jump out. So all the files are there, just highlighted that. So the files are there ready for translation for that file, home.xib. And if I now jump out to the Finder again, I'm sure you won't notice, but home.xib is not in this directory anymore. But what is in here is your en.lproj, which is your source language. Xcode, I think, sometimes calls that english.lproj, but they're interchangeable. And so we've got en.lproj, de.lproj, we've got fr.lproj, es for Spanish, and ja for Japanese. So right now, this file system is set up and ready for translation. And if I look inside the en.lproj directory, I see home.xib. Have I lost people? Is this making sense? Okay, good. All right. So now what I've done here is I've just jumped right back in, and by magic, I have taken all the XIB files, excuse me, and set them up, and you can see the corresponding language versions of the different files under the file name. And if I jump out to the Finder and look in the en.lproj directory again, I'll see that I have 4 files in here ready for translation. So these are my layout files, so I'm halfway there. I'm halfway there in terms of internationalizing the product. So now I'm going to go back to the hard-coded strings that exist in the .m file, and these are string literals, and the code will pick them up and display them, but I need to facilitate the localized versions of these. So in order to do that, you got to go ahead and create a file called localizable.strings. You save this file in the resources directory, and then you internationalize this file by setting up all the languages for this file, and there they are. So I've got the 5 localizable.strings files ready to be translated into the different languages, and so we're almost there. So let me see what happened here. Okay, so we're back to the hard-coded string literals, so we need to get rid of each of these strings. So there goes one. There goes a piece of another. Okay, so we've just deleted all of those strings, and I'm going to replace them now with the appropriate calls. So in Xcode, you wrap the string literal with a call to NSLocalizeString, and I'm not sure if you can really see this here, but I've added a developer comment to the end, the indication to the translator as to what this string means. So this is very important for developers to put this, because the layout and how this is represented is driven by the code as opposed to the XIB formats that we looked at earlier. So it's really important that you give the context. Is it a noun? Is it a verb? And if you can give some indication as to how much real estate you have when you translate this. So we're almost there. I've marked up at this stage every hard-coded string in my Xcode project, and now Apple provides a nice little tool called GenStrings that you drop out into the terminal, and when you run GenStrings, it goes in, greps across all the files, and puts the localizable content into a .strings file. And so that's what we're looking at here right now, are the 2 strings that I externalized. So this is the format that can be given off safely to a translator and translated. And so if I look out to the Finder now, I can see that I have all of the files out here ready for translation. So that was internationalizing or setting up your Xcode project. This directory here will contain, as I said earlier, images and sounds if they need to be translated as well. Zip up this directory and off you go, send it over to the translator, get it translated and bring it back. And you'll get back translations for the es.l project directory, the fr.l project directory, accordingly whatever languages you've set up, populate it in there, build your app, ship it, and make lots of international money. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay.
What about multiple meanings, read and read?
Yeah, so you've got to qualify that within your comment to the translator.
I meant in the same file, you need both of them translated, obviously, into different words.
Yeah, so you can actually. Okay, you've asked a deep question here. So the GenStrings tool will grep and will consolidate the same meaning text into one string in the strings file, but you can go in and make it, explicit in the code that it's key 1 equals read, as in I'm about to read something, and key 2 equals read also, and that's a different meaning, and you'll end up with 2 keys in the strings file. So you can differentiate between the 2 within Xcode. Yes.
Oh, is that a different API call?
No, the NSLocalizeString is exactly the same, but you can't use GenStrings to generate the strings in the .strings file. You have to go in and explicitly name the keys yourself, and then you're into maintaining key value pairs between your code and between your strings file. So you just lose the nice functionality of GenStrings, and I don't know, maybe there's a parameter in GenStrings that I'm not familiar with that allows for that, but I don't think there is. Okay, I see JJ not shaking his head, so he knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, you can be as explicit with all of your key value pairs in your code and your .strings file as you want. Yes.
Like in the German talk, usually it's much better.
Yes.
Great is much more wide.
Yes.
Where sometimes the Japanese character is so small that you don't have to read it. So if it's just localized the string, it may not fit in the UI.
Correct.
So what happened there?
Okay, so the question is, there are times where German text gets really long and it won't fit in the bounding box or the button defined within code for displaying that. And also the converse for Japanese, where the text gets so small, it's hard to read at a smaller font size. These are problems that come up through testing, and pseudo-localization, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, goes a long way to that. It doesn't really address the font size issues, the bolding of text or the italicization of text within code, and then you put in an ideographic character and it's just not legible. So QA is really important, and we had that problem in the Heart Pro app that I showed earlier, where some of the font sizes were small and the ideographic characters of Japanese, Chinese and Korean just weren't displayed correctly. So we had to go in and externalize the font size as a localizable element. And so it depends. Complicated apps, you're just going to have to get a little more clever as to what you put into the hands of the translators and how you convey that message to the translator to make sure that it fits. Yes, question over here.
You're working with an app that has the hard-coded stuff into plist. Do you ever get people where they're just putting their UI in places that they shouldn't?
So the question is, people are hard coding their strings into plists, and what should we do about that? And what should we do about those people? Well, I have to keep it clean here. This is going out on YouTube. So plists are actually localizable. You can make them localizable, and plists are structured format. They're basically XML, and there's different various there's not a standard plist. You can define it whatever way you want. It's just like XML. Once they make those files localizable, right, the plist file is going to end up in this directory that we're looking at on the screen right now, and it just becomes another file for translation. So I can talk to you afterwards about this and give you some pointers. Any other questions before I brave the world of live software demo? Okay. So just give me a second here while I fumble about. I don't know what happened. There we go. Okay. Okay, so I said I was going to show you the actual project that I had the screenshots of, and here it is. We're going to work in this directory here, dog food demo, and you notice here that here are the XIB files that I showed you earlier. I'm going to just go ahead and launch this project in Xcode, and here I can see some of the screens, and if I wanted to edit that, I could go ahead and edit that, or I could resize a button. And so the different XIB files are sitting here. I'm just going to go ahead and run this very quickly just to show you that it is an actual iPad app. And so here it is running in the simulator. It doesn't do anything. I told you that. It does come down here. Okay, there's no image loaded. I'll load an image and then I'll try to load it again. A little error message will come up. Oh, I think there's some remnants here of some pseudo translation. That's an Xcode problem, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. And the eagle-eyed viewers will notice, maybe I need to scale this up to 100%, that I'm running in French. So this simulator is running in French. Julian can confirm that, and the accent is the correct one. And JJ was probably responsible for translating that, so it's all good. I have to be very careful what I say here. There's too many people that have had their hands on all of these apps and all of these environments. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close this project here. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to demonstrate for you a quick tool that we've written, and this is pre-release software. This is not available. These APIs are not public, but I'm going to run a tool here that will set up that project that we just looked at and do all of the clicking for me, if you like. It's not clicking, but it will set up the project file for localization. So I have a little tool here called tetris.sh, and so it's just asking me now for the source script that I'm going to run to do this. So I'll pick that. It's in this directory here. And now it's going to ask me what languages I want to add to the project. So this is getting a little bit at what I think Apple should be doing within Xcode themselves. Not necessarily this UI, this is pretty rough, but you'll get the idea. So I'm going to say yes. The project that I just launched a second ago, I want to translate this into German. I want to add French. I want to add Spanish, yes, and I want to add Japanese. Okay, and now I'm going to stop adding languages. Now it's going to ask me, this is a little bit reverse logic, but it's going to ask me where is the actual project. And so the project is sitting out here in this directory called dog food demo. And you'll notice all the XIB files are here at the top level of this directory and so on. So I'm going to choose that. I'm going to confirm that that's what I want to do. And so what happened was this script just went right in, took the project file, added all those languages, set up all the directories, did everything, and then it grepped through all of the code to find all of the string literals within the code, and it's prompting me here now for these 5 strings. So if you remember from the demos, from the screenshots earlier, we had no image loaded, and I showed you how that ended up. So it's prompting me here right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and do, yes, I want to externalize this. This is a string, and I'm going to provide a developer comment. Very important. So this is the default message when no image loaded. Okay, the linguist here, would that be good enough for you to translate this? Should I say what else? No? Good enough? I just need to make sure I'm telling people the right thing to do when I have these demos. Okay, so the second one was I want to add this string to localizable.strings. You cannot load a project that is already loaded. Yes, I want to externalize this. I'm going to say alert when project already loaded. Okay, and I'm going to add that to localizable.strings. Okay, the next one is OK, the text. I tell people don't bother externalizing OK. It depends on the phrasing of the question as whether the answer is OK or not, but for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to say no, so I don't want to externalize that. No image to unload. Yes, I want to externalize this, and this is an alert when no image to unload. Okay, and I want to add this string, and the last string is OK, and I'm going to say no. And that's it, I'm done. Now if I spin right back out to the Finder, you'll see that all of the XIB files, this script has moved all of the XIB files into the appropriate english.l project directory, ja.l project directory. And if I go ahead and launch this project, yay, everything's done. So the everything has been set up so that this is localizable, and I've got placeholders, if you like, for the localized files when they come back from the translator. So let me go ahead and close that. And if I look in here now to my english.l project directory, I'll see I have the XIB files that it just automatically picked up, and it went and created the localizable.strings file. If I open that, I see no image loaded, and the developer comment that I provided, the context to give to the translator, and so on. So this app is now ready for translation. Any questions on that?
So why would the translator care for any of the other files other than the localizable.strings?
They don't. And so that's exactly the point, is that everything, and Apple has a really good infrastructure for this, and as does Android and as does .NET, everyone's doing it. But Apple were, I guess, the forerunners in all of this in terms of localizable resources and script support and so on way back in the day. So that's exactly what we've done here. We have taken all of these files, put them into the english.l project directory. Now, localizable.strings, it's very easy to give this to a translator. They know that the key over here shouldn't be translated, and they can translate here accordingly. These are pretty straightforward strings. There are no placeholders in here. I didn't put in any complicated strings. But if I decide to open this file here, right, outside of the Apple tools, the Apple development environment, it's a big old XML file. And there's only a few strings in here. So that's part of localization engineering, I guess, and processing, and I'll show that in a second, is it's the extraction of the localizable content from the format that it needs to exist in. That's where localization engineering comes in, and the right tools and the right parsers, and can you deal with these file types. Does that make sense?
That's known as job security.
Sorry?
That's known as job security.
Correct. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run another script that basically takes the contents of this english.l project directory, and it's going to send it up to the Tetris service. So I'm going to go and send this project up there. I guess before I do that, I should spin out here very quickly and go up to the site. Let me do this. Okay, so this is our site. It's actually a test server. If any of you have gone to tetris.com, you'll notice that this is quite different. This is pre-release software. I decided to take a chance on this. If it burns, if it dies and burns here, we're going to go over to production. But I never like running demos on live production. And because I'm on video, my team will see me. And if they see me doing demos on live production, then I'll never be able to tell them not to do it again. So basically, pre-release. That's a mouthful. Pre-release software here. We're working with a great designer called Max Schultz up in San Francisco, and he's done a really good job here on this. So I'm going to go ahead and log in to Tetris, and I'm going to use my username. I hope I'm connected to the internet. Okay, so I've been playing with the site today a few times, and I've added a few different projects here, but in my app section or my dashboard, I have 4 apps in here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go out, and rather than use the site to go down and zip up the files or put them into SVN and grab them from within the Tetris site, I'm going to send everything from my disk or from my project up to Tetris using this script here. So forgive the UI, this is very pre-release. By the way, these tools that I'm showing here in the terminal, the previous tool that did the internationalization, we're probably going to open source that. There's nothing in there. I'd love to work with Apple to integrate something like that into Xcode. We're not building our business on these types of tools. We're really just trying to facilitate a marketplace for translators and developers to work together. And so anything that makes it easy for the developer to go and procure these translation services. This one here, again, we probably open source this, but this tool here is actually going to talk through an API to our server. So a few options here. I'm going to go ahead and connect to the same server that I just logged into in the browser. Okay, so it's going to go up and connect to the server, hopefully. Okay, so I'm connected, I'm online, and I'm going to choose the project that I want to send to Tetris. I'm sending this to Tetris for 2 reasons. One is I want to purchase translations, but the main one I'm doing right now is I want to receive back pseudo translation for my files so that I can verify that my app is localizable and everything that I think I have externalized, designed is localizable. And I'm going to go through that process with you. So I'm going to go ahead now and pick this dog food demo. So this is the project that we just prepared with the other script a few minutes ago. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. And now I'm just going to go ahead and upload it to Tetris. So I'm going to choose number 4 here. And what it's prompting me for now, what it's prompting for is, how do I want to send this content to Tetris? And so as a developer, I can pick SVN or zip. So if I had this project under SVN, source control within Xcode, I could tell, this script could tell, check in your English.lproj into your SVN location. And then it will tell Tetris that the SVN location is over here, prompt you for the username and password. And so Tetris will pull your content from SVN. So this is getting back to the maintenance and the supporting the continuous development process for the developer. We're trying to make this as easy for a developer to get his content over to us. So if he's an SVN jockey and he works away in the terminal all the time and he finishes writing code and he builds his app and life is great, all he's got to do is make sure that's in SVN and we're ready to pick that up and process and translate accordingly. So I'm going to do zip file here. So I'll choose Z. And now I'm going to go ahead and upload the project. So it's going to go ahead and zip up. So it's just telling me here that it zipped up the contents of the English.lproj directory from that Xcode or from the root directory of the project. And now it's asking me which platform am I using, iOS or Mac. This has some relevance on our site from a linguistic perspective, but also from the handling of the file formats and so on. So I'm going to tell it that I'm an iOS app. And I'm going to enter a project name. So just to prove this is live, somebody give me a name. IMUG 408. Okay, so the project name is IMUG 408. So what it's doing right now is it's taking that zip file and it's sending it off up to Tetris. Tetris is receiving it and it's going to start processing all those files, and it's generating pseudo translation. The pseudo translation method, and you'll see it in a second, is we take every vowel in every string that you present to us for translation and we accent it, including Y's, and then we elongate the text by 30%. And our algorithm is, if it's a single word, we add the digits 1, 2, 3 up to 30% to the end of the string to make it stretch. And if it's a sentence, we add the words O-N-E, T-W-O, T-H-R-E-E out to a 30% in terms of characters. So we're just simulating the translation process. When we started out the company, we were going up to Google and pushing everything through Google Translate and doing pseudo-German. And we decided not to do that because sometimes Google Translate doesn't give you back, it gives you back the same English, so that's a false test in terms of looking at the app. So really what our pseudo translation process does is it just touches every string, so to prove that your app is localizable. Because what a developer does not want to do is think he's ready and then send us his content, get it translated, and find out that his app is half translated. So the issue is not so much a cost issue, it's a time thing. So if this guy expects to do his translation in 3 days and comes back after 3 days and has spent, X amount of money and realized that he's half translated, he's got to come back and spend X again, but he's got to wait another 3 days. So it's really a time thing. Okay, so the server has responded and told me that pseudo translation is done. Now what it's prompting me for, and I'm not going to do this, it's prompting me, do I want to purchase languages from within this environment? I haven't done pseudo testing yet, so I wouldn't go and translate these, purchase these languages. And I'm going to do that for you on the server in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and say, no, I don't want to purchase German. And no, I don't want to purchase Spanish. No to French, no to Japanese, and that's fine. So we leave that sitting there. So now let me spin out and refresh my dashboard. Fingers crossed. There's a project called IMUG 408. So what I'm going to do is click on that. Now, this site is pre-release. We are skinning it right now. So the page I'm about to show you is not skinned. It's fully functional. If it crashes and burns, I'll go out to our production server to demonstrate another project. But the graphics are not there. It's really just a wireframe. So hopefully it's going to go there. Yes. Why didn't I? I guess we got some people in the audience that could take it over. Okay, so quick. Okay, all right. So again, this is not skinned, but the functionality is there. So what you'll notice here are all of the files under my English section, which is not properly labeled because we haven't skinned it yet, and the number of words that exist in those files. So to go back to what you asked, Reem, so let's take a look at the actual home.html. Hopefully, this low Google network here. Yeah, so there it is. So basically, sitting on our server is the actual XML file, but that's of no interest to our translators, and it's no interest to us from a business perspective, if you like. So now how do I close this window? There we go. So, but the thing that's important here is that there are 7 words in this file, and when I click on this little link here, I'll see the 7 words across probably 2 or 3 strings. So this should pop up right now. By the way, I guess I should say while this is happening, and this is not a blame question or a blame comment. Everything you see here is running on Google App Engine. So we've built our business on Google App Engine. So everything here is written in Django. All the code is written in Python. Our integration with PayPal and everything, it's all running on Google infrastructure. And I'm not making that comment as an excuse for it being slow, but I just wanted to mention the technology that we're using. And so here I can see, okay, I've got a weird screen resolution here, but basically I can see welcome to dog food, username, password, and sign in. So these are the 4 strings, the 7 words out of that morass of XML. So we've done the localization engineering, if you like, or the extraction. That's nothing that Apple's tools can't do, like IB tool will kick out these strings, but we have our own parsers to take care of this. And we've also extracted out the width and height information. And what I'm not showing you here is we have font information as well. And this all is part of the translator experience. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Yes, question?
That brings to our attention that word counts are fairly low in apps, so price per word is not as important. If you could comment on pricing structure.
Yeah, I'm going to scroll down and talk about that right now, unless there was one more question before I go on.
Yeah,
Yes.
Actually, the pseudo translation methods that you use, do you have a method that you apply for Asian languages, for example, to assure double byte handling?
No, and I guess this was an eternal debate when I worked here at Google, because I was pressured for a long time to come up with a good scheme for Arabic and Hebrew. And I used to say, well, what's a good scheme? And so I'm not knocking the question at all, but it is a difficult one. So the pseudo-localization scheme, and I'll reveal this in a second, is self-service to the developer who doesn't speak the language. So we could add, I worked at Adobe, and we had a great pseudo-localization scheme there, where you put a couple of the GB 18030 characters at the beginning of the strings, the one that caused all sorts of problems, and made sure that they at least displayed. But you couldn't really affect every character with an Asian character, because you get lost in your user interface, right? Format C : yes or no. I mean, if I take that, if I pseudo translate that and you can't read it, you can't actually get through your app. So I don't have a good answer to that, but we could stick strings at the beginning or the end. And we haven't created a customizable interface for this, and I don't think we ever will. But if people ask for this, we can. It's a simple script, because we've done all the protection of the placeholders. We've done the extraction out of the XML, so now we can touch, if you like, or affect the actual strings that are going to be presented to a translator ultimately. Okay, so.
Just a quick question. So this file actually has some strings that the translators can translate as well. It's not only the localized.
Correct.
So they're like mainly the interface.
Correct. And so, so the question was, are there strings in the .xib or .nib files from Mac? And the answer is yes. And this is a good debate when I go to developer conferences. I have guys that have absolutely no content whatsoever in an XIB file, and everything is in their .strings file, because they don't want the hassle of having to maintain them. And that's true, because the tools on Apple, the interface builder, does a great job of extracting out all of the strings, but then you lose some of the layout information. You've got to go in and hand tweak this. So guys try.
Developers still use interface builders as well to
Right.
their apps.
Yes.
They don't have much.
Yeah. So what we're doing here, and you'll see in the, wow, we're about to run out of time. I just realized that it's 8:45. How are we doing, Joe?
Yeah, well, when we can, I think we ought to wrap up.
Okay, all right. So let me go through this very quickly. So I go down here and look at my pseudo translation, and I can see the files, and this is machine, as in it's not machine translation. It's code generated. And so if I look at the strings file for the localizable .strings, pop this up here, we'll see the scheme that I was talking about. Running a little slow. Okay, what I'll do is, while it's trying to pop that up, I'm just going to go ahead and, oops, there, I messed it up. Okay, let me just download the file. That might be quicker. Okay, so the file is downloaded. Let me just try this really quickly. Okay, there we go. So no image loaded is translated to no image loaded with all of this accented characters, and then the extension 1, 2, and here's a longer string that's extended by 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I did, and I'll do this very quickly, is I just downloaded here. Let me just do this. Whoops. I just downloaded the pseudo-translated files. And if I go in here, I'm going to pick these up, copy, and I'm going to go ahead and drop these into I'll do the French, no, I'll do the German locale. I'm going to overwrite all of these files. Okay, so I've just pseudo-localized. And so if I go back now into the project and take a look at this, and if I look at did I do German or French? I'm just German. Okay, so here's German. So I've pseudo-localized these strings. Okay, if I look at the German for project.xib, I'll see the same thing. Unload image 1, unload image 2. And so now what we need to do is, Xcode can be tricky. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to set my locale to German. Okay, while it switches, I'm going to clean the build. Sorry, I've got to do all of this. There's a slight bug in Xcode and the simulator. So now I'm going to run this, and hopefully it will launch in the German locale, and I'll see all those accented characters. So the idea is that, yeah, here we are. Welcome to dog food 1, 2. So right now I'm looking at this and I can say, yeah, my button seems to, expand okay. I'm not running off the screen here. I'll go into the project.xib. I see no image loaded, so I've touched all of these things. Tetris isn't translated because it's an image. We wouldn't do that for a product name. I'm going to hit load image. It loaded. I'm going to hit this again and I see, oh, now it's externalized. So you would play with the app, and if I came across any string in here that's still unaccented, I say, wow, I forgot that file, I'm pulling something from the database, and so on. So basically, it's a way to test your app before you actually go and purchase any translations.
So, for example, you would know that the OK was never externalized.
Yes, and it's because it's not accented, and we made that conscious decision in the script earlier to say don't externalize this, so I'm okay with that. What a pun. Sorry, it's getting late.
Do you have any support for applications that are already localized?
Yes. So the question was, do we have support for applications that are localized already? I hear myself speeding up because I know we need to get out of here at 9 o'clock. And we can talk about this afterwards if anybody is interested. Yes, we built our infrastructure from day one to allow people to migrate from, to upload translations that they have already. So we will suck in your English.l project directory, we'll suck in each of the language directories, we'll align everything, and then we'll put that project into a state of needs review. And so we ask people to pay for a review of that. If they don't want to, well, that's our own risk. But if we're going to engage a translator who's ultimately responsible for the quality of the app, we want them to do that review. So yeah, we have that facility. And there's a nasty bug in Interface Builder prior to 3.1. And it misaligned IDs, and so we're dealing with that for some people, but it's fixed now, thankfully, at Apple. Okay, so I'm just going to really quickly go back out here to the server, and let's imagine I uploaded all my pseudo-translated files, I tested, everything's good. Now I come back into the site. If I don't have to reload my files, I'll just come in here and add a language. And so I'm going to come in and I'm going to purchase German. Add language. So it's going to go and calculate the costs of translating that and give me a quote here, and I can see it's $44. By the way, this app is not reflective of a real app. I mean, it's like screens with nothing. There's 2 error messages and 4 buttons. I guess there could be apps that small, but this is not reflective of any business that we've done. And we've done apps that are about $100. So what you see here is each of the individual files, and there's a level of translator that you can assign. And we've got this standard level translation, professional, ultra, and none, meaning you can say, I don't want this file translated. I happen to upload it, but for this particular language, I don't want it. I might need it in another language for whatever reason, so we've full flexibility. What's not in this pop-up menu is my translator, or my group of translators that I have worked with in the past, like my cousin in Germany or my friend in Japan or whatever the case may be. And you go in, you can add them. I don't have time to show that in the user interface right now, but we do provide that facility. And any traffic that goes through the site with that particular person, we charge, I think it's 4 cents a word for that. You get a breakdown on the price here. And so if I click on this number, it's going to tell me, my pop-ups are so, okay, it's going to tell me that I have 6 words here. The rate for professional here is 12 cents a word, 72 cents. This is the first time I've done this project, so there's no leveraged words, there's no previously translated words. Now, I'll make the distinction. This is not translation memory fuzzy matching. This is exact match strings across your project. So if you're an app developer and you do an app with us today, and we translate it entirely, and you put up another app tomorrow, we'll leverage the strings from your app, from your first app into your second app. We'll mark them as such, and we'll advise that you get them reviewed. If you translate a string today in a button and present your same app again in 6 weeks, and you've changed a string somewhere else in the app, that button is leveraged. It's not leveraged. It's actually reuse of your translation, so that doesn't go into review. Okay, so I realize we've got to go, but I'm just going to very, very, very quickly is check out. And so I agree to terms of service, and we kick you out to PayPal, and you pay before we put the job into the hands of the translator. This is stubbed out on this service. It's not enabled. But I should get to the next screen. Okay, so transferring to PayPal. It's not actually doing that. It's processing, and I'll come back to my apps page, and I'll see it processing, and then it will hit our network, straight out to our translator network. And while it's doing that, I'm going to launch our translation tool. So let me just get rid of this for a second. I hope it's going to work, because I do want to mention this tool here. So it's the Tetris interactive localization tool. This app is built on Flex and deployed in Adobe Air. So we built a translation front end to our server that works cross-platform. Most of the translators in the world, the professional translators, are on Windows because they use Trados. They may be iPhone owners, but they may not have a Mac. So we built a tool that's platform independent. It's a matter of switching this to a Flash-based deployed in the browser if we want, but we've built it as an installable tool. So I'm going to log in here very quickly, because I want to give you a quick look at the translator experience. So I'm logging in as a master translator here that should see all the jobs that are on the server. And I'll just quickly, let's see, maybe not. Yeah, there it is. So there's IMUG 408 project, appeared on the network. It's an English to German translation, 4 files, there are the number of words. So as a translator, I go and I take that off the network. It comes into my inbox. It's taken out of circulation so somebody else can't grab it. And then I basically have a WYSIWYG translator in here. So if I open up, let's see, a good file here. So here's a file, load image. So I'm going to basically type in DE_load image as the translation. Hit that as complete. And my auto scroll is not really working, but there is the text. And so now the unload image, if I have DE unload, and as a translator, if I see that this is not going to fit, I can actually, let's see if I can do this. There it is. Okay, Snap's not working, but I can basically resize images over here. And this is independent of the Mac development tools. So I mentioned earlier that if you want to use Xcode, you've got to have a Mac and you've got to run Xcode. What we've done for all the layout files, all the XIB files, we've built this WYSIWYG editor to allow the translators do, in effect, the localization engineering for those files. So this is kind of the debate. If you don't put your files, if you don't put your localizable content into XIB files, we can't empower the translators, and we've got context issues, so you've got to give good developer comments. So it swings and roundabouts. What I like to say to developers is use XIBs as much as you can. The context is there, the layout is there, the flow is there, and so on. Okay, I would ordinarily submit this back to the server, release it to QA, and then the developer downloads it, build it into his app, and away he goes. And again, if it's in SVN, he gets a notification that it's back in SVN. He just syncs to SVN and downloads. So really, what I've tried to show here is that we have a very simple interface at the front end to get the content into our service, and then we very quickly get it over to our translators. There's no file handling. There's no files passing back and forth. There's no uploading and downloading. There's no email emails and so on. It is all truly in the cloud. And, this overhead is what allows us to do things at the price we're doing, and hopefully at the efficiency and the expediency that the developers want for these small projects. So we do projects in anything from 48 hours to 72, depending on the number of words, but not too much back and forth. You just go to the network and take it down. So let me just grab very quickly my closing slides, and then I'll get off the stage. Yes, and so we flash by it very, very quickly there. I should have pointed it out on that screen. We charge $39.99 to initiate a language on our service. So if you buy 4 languages, that's 4 times $39.99. We have different word rates comparable with any localization company out there in terms of the price per word that we charge. And we have a minimum $9.99 per job. So if you purchase 3 words from us today with a $39.99 initiation fee, it's $39.99 plus 3 times 12, right? If you come back in a week's time and you've got 2 words that need to be translated, and that's going to be 24 cents, you pay us $9.99. So we can't bring translators in for anything less than $9.99, so we have a minimum. So we try to encourage developers to be disciplined about when they get updates and building everything up into a job that's sizable. So let me just get the closing slides, and then I think we're done. Okay, so I'm not going to belabor the solution. I think it should be pretty obvious from the demo as to what we do. Here are just some of our customers today. I'm not going to talk about them because we're stuck for time. But I just want to leave you with a couple of closing remarks. So developers in the audience, sign up for a free account with Tetris. There's no charge to create an account. There's no charge to get the pseudo localization and test the localizability of your app. We do offer today, and we've been doing this since we started, free French for your first app, up to about 1,500 words. It's not because we think French is a cheap language. We just happen to have people on staff who can do this. And it is one of the, I'm careful, there's a French person in the audience right over there. And come along then and purchase languages. And like we say in our little tagline, we do want to unlock global sales. For the translators, come in and join our network. Start translating. Get out there and get those apps into the non-English speaking consumers of the world. We hope to build an ecosystem where we put the kudos out there for the people that do the translation. I think a lot of times translators are the unsung heroes in jobs. Nobody knows who translated Google's apps. Nobody knows who translated Microsoft's apps. But I think the community and the environment that people live in today, and the app developers, we'd like to go out there and give them the kudos for that. And so jump on board. And then I didn't really talk about this, but a quick one for localization companies. So we'd like to talk to some small localization companies who might see the value in using this service, come in and partner with us. We have enterprise level pricing for use of this service. And so we're interested in talking to people who might have people they translate websites for, or bigger content, but the apps, they're small. It's maybe hard to make $1 out of those apps because of the process that you use. But I think that we've got a service that will allow people to link the small app developers with the translators in an efficient and cost-effective manner. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you. And here's my contact information.